Hey guys, how you going? How's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video. Hope everyone's well wherever you are. And a while back, as I mentioned in the description, I made, as a fan of Italian football, you can probably see with my nice Italian top on here, which my mum's friend got me from Sicily actually. I know she's from Sicily, I think that's where she got the top from. Anyway, most of all my clothes pretty much are hand-me-downs. I've never actually went to a shop to buy my own clothes, but partly due to my social anxiety sometimes, but especially when I was younger. But anyway, so I'll try and get to the point. But as a fan of Italian football as well as Celtic, I made a video or a few videos talking about my questions I would like to ask Milan fans, AC Milan fans, and I'd love to do the same for all Italian teams as well as Celtic. So I asked like questions about who they would like to see the club sign and things like that, and what their dreams are for the team and things like that. So I thought I'd do the same version for Celtic. So I hope my fellow Celts, and I put in speech marks for some reason, use my patterns, my fellow Celtic fans will enjoy these videos, and I'd love to hear from you or read the comments if you take it literally. So I hope you'll get involved in like the questions like I ask, and the questions on the side if you can see them on the live chat or things like that. So I hope my fellow Celts will get involved. And here goes. So number one, what areas do you think the club needs strengthening, or are you quite happy with the team at the moment? I know Celtic beat Rangers recently 1-0, which obviously was a great result against our rivals. Being 4 points clear as well in the league is really important and things like that. But I think there's probably been an overreaction on both sides. Like I think it's a bit too early to get excited from a Celtic point of view. And but Rangers fans are not happy with the way their team are playing. But if they got a new manager in, or if Michael Beale proved us wrong and really improved them, I worry that we're not quite as good as we think we are, just because we've had. I didn't see the game, so I mean, some people might enlighten me and say that Celtic played a lot better. But I think we were probably lucky with the free kick decision. I think the offside was probably quite clear. I think most people agree on it. But if they do improve a bit, could we be in danger? I'm glad we put 4 points clear, because that gives us a bit of breathing space. They would have to beat us all throughout the season in the league. They would have to have beaten us in 2 more games than we beat them. But I think we might need to improve. And if so, what areas would you like to see players being signed? Number 2, are you happy with the goalkeeper, for instance, or would you like to see a new keeper? I suppose Joe Hart is getting on a bit, and he is prone to a mistake or two, especially in certain games. And some say he's improving, or against Rangers he performed well. But I suppose if he does perform badly in a few games, who would you like to see? Or do you think Celtic need a new keeper to take us to a next level? Or do you think Joe Hart is good enough? I'd love to hear what you think about that. Number 3, also the defence. Do you think we need new defenders, especially maybe even if you think like Carter Vickers and people like that are good enough? But do you think that maybe if we get injuries like we have recently, do you think there needs to be more reinforcements? So if people like him are injured, we got good replacements on the subs bench. So I think it's good to have a good squad as well as just individual players. So I think that's point number 3. Also to add to that, how can we give all fans a voice and connect with the club where we agree to disagree? Like me, I'm a libertarian, unlike pretty much every Celtic fan, or probably most Celtic fans who might be more socialist or communist or left-wing leaning. I'm more fan not for those reasons, but because of anti-imperialistic reasons. I'm not very good with pronunciation. It's a big word for me, imperialism. But as an anti-imperialist, but I'm also a libertarian. So how do we? I know some Celtic fans said like Tories not welcome when they talked about Rod Stewart. I think there's one guy who was part of the club who a lot of fans got rid of because he had more right-wing views. But how do we accept that? How do we get? Because I'd love for the club to have as many fans as possible. So also we need an opposition, and if everyone's a Celtic fan, it would be boring. But I'd love for us to be welcoming to people who are left-wing, right-wing, conservative, fiscally conservative, or libertarians like myself. Obviously, I'd want more people like me to be involved in the club. But at the same time, like, how do we balance it so we can agree to disagree on some things politically or things like that? I think that was point number 3. Number 4, again, other areas, other positions, like who would you like to see in midfield, who would you like to see up front, how what areas would you like seeing strengthened? Like, I think, like, say if strikers get injured or they get tired, who, if we had players to bring off the bench. So even if you think Kyogo is really good, even if you think he's world class, or he's certainly world class for Scottish level or whatever, could we bring someone off the bench? So if he does get injured, or if he does get tired, or if he's not performing well for whatever reason, or he's going on a bit of an off spell. So I'd love to know where you think Celtic should strengthen, and like including the squad players. I'd love to see Celtic, as well as the town teams, have the best possible keeper, and also sub keeper. Same with defenders, sub defenders, midfielders, centre backs, wing backs, strikers, centre mids, and wingers. I'd love to see have strength in all of those areas, and strength in depth, and even on the bench, I'd say. So I'd love to know what you think and what we could do to improve. Also, what you think the club should stand for. Like, I think it'd be cool if the club worked with the police, the government, state, local politicians, even national politicians, and that kind of thing, charities, NGOs, and that kind of thing as well. Made sure we operate within the law. And a controversial and a difficult one. I know in history, there was a lot of bad things that were done at the club under the boys' club. So I wonder, it's a difficult one to talk about, but the child abuse scandal that happened, what do you think the club could do to rectify such? Like, to me, I think that the people who were abused, children who were abused, and their families should be compensated in some way. Obviously, most of them, or probably all of them, are adults by now, but I think they should be compensated in some way, or their families, or both, obviously. And also, I think it's important the club learns from such. And I know it's got a safeguarding thing in place now, but how can it ensure that no abuses or things like that happen at the club, and how can we ensure we always stick with the law? I'd love for Celtic to be tax exempt, which is another question I could ask. Would you love for the same thing? But I always hope we'll do things within the law. I suppose it's what I stand for, so I'm putting my own values onto the club. Number 5, would you welcome wealthy investors like Arabian, Asian, African, European, Latin American, or other such investors? Like me personally, I would love for the club to be like the Swiss. I'd love for Italian football and Celtic to be like the Swiss version of football. So we could have, I'd say in speech marks, like we, for some reason, I don't know why, that's another habit of mine. Yeah, I should be careful not to say in speech marks. It probably sounds like I'm not a proper fan, some people might say, but I think I support the club just like anyone else, and I think it's each fan should support them in their own way. But obviously, sometimes people like to go as a group or whatever. But even though I don't go to games, or I don't get to go to games or go to games or whatever, I prefer to watch from the comfort of my sitting room or living room or whatever, or go to the pub or bar and watch for some reason. But I suppose I miss out the atmosphere. And maybe one day I would love to go to Celtic Park or to watch the game somewhere. But due to my social anxieties, I do find it difficult. As I say, I think all fans should be able to support the club in their own way, and I'd love to know what you think about each of these points as well, or any sort of comments you want to make. So I suppose these are questions like, how can the club connect with the fans? But I think financially is one of the biggest ways. Like, if I had a way to invest in the club or donate to the club or support the club financially, I think I'd be supporting them as well, if not better, than people who actually go to every game, because nowadays money is so important in all areas of society, I suppose, including football, or even especially football, really. It takes billions to run a really top flight club. But I would love to know, sorry, I've made this really roundabout, it's going around a bit in a roundabout way, but would you welcome wealthy people? And I'd love it if we could bypass sanctions, so that even Russia, countries like that, America and Russia and China, even rival nations, especially the BRICS, rival nations, and also the BRICS, rather, and the BRICS Development Bank, who hopefully are not rival nations. Hopefully they'll be even more connected by investing in Italian football and Celtic. I would love for all possible investors to invest in Italian teams and Celtic, to have as much money as possible. But I've heard from other Celtic fans who, for whatever reason, don't think that would be a good thing. I suppose a fear could be if they pull the investment out. Some people say, what happened to our rivals could happen to us if we went down that route, or what happened to, I nearly said Peterborough then, what happened to Portsmouth, sorry, and Leeds in the past and teams like that, and what could happen to Man City, like if they get points deductions or they get punishments for breaching financial fair play. So I hope we do everything legally. I think I'd welcome any investment and sponsorship, especially investment, if they had 5 to 10 year plans and guarantees, so that they say they're not going to get bored or pull money out. And also if we had many co-owners and shareholders and that equity holders and whatnot, co-owners basically and investors. So even if some pulled out, would still have money from other sources. And the investors who invest in Celtic as well as sponsors hopefully will help the club to become financially viable for other investors. So it would mean it's worth it for investors, and they'll see a good return on investment, which would hopefully encourage others to invest. But I'd love to know what you think about that. Do you disagree with me on that? You think I'm bonkers? Probably right anyway, even if you do. But I'd love to know from Celtic fans on both sides of the spectrum on this opinion, both sides of the divide. So why you would or would not want to see so much investment, and if so, is there something that could change your mind if you didn't want to see the investment, like guarantees, 5-10 year plans and things like that? Yeah, it'd be cool to have opinion polls. And again, how do you think the club can connect with the fans? Number 6, moving on. Sorry, I've made this video a lot longer than planned. Not much I thought. Sorry. Do you think Italian football and Celtic should have a connection between each other? I would love for that to happen as a fan of both Italian football and Celtic. I'd love for people from Mediterranean, Middle Eastern, and transcontinental, especially Eurasian nations that are in 2 continents, to support Celtic, to follow and support Celtic as much as possible personally. But especially, I'd love for Celtic to have a special relationship with Italian football, where they get along as much as possible and like train together, especially at youth level and things like that. Number 7, what do you think could benefit the club in terms of attracting more investment and more sponsorship and things like that? Do you have any other ideas which could strengthen the club's position in terms of getting investment, acquiring investment and sponsorship? Like I say, if some investors invest, hopefully that will encourage other investors to have small shares each. Like if they could sell rather equity and enable all possible companies to be welcome to invest in Celtic, and like try and find all possible legal ways to be as feasible to investors as possible. I think it'd be a rather cool irony, although it'd be cruel for our opposition, but if Rangers investors and sponsors, possibly even their fans in some cases, or in many cases, jumped ship and actually invested in and sponsored us instead. I think that'd be quite cheeky and cool. Number 8, what is it that you love about Celtic, and what does it mean to you? What does the club mean to you, and how can we attract more fans? And like, I'd love for POC, people of colour, to support Celtic. I'd love to know what people think about Celtic and things like that. And also like the game, I'd love to hear from neutral fans as well, perhaps even like about the game. Do they think that the decision to disallow the second goal, where it was like a judge to be fouled, I wonder what Scottish fans or football fans generally who might have seen that think about that, whether they think it was a fair result or not from a more fair and balanced and neutral point of view. I always try and be as fair as possible, although I do love Italian teams and Celtic. I do try and make it as fair as possible. Number 9, what are your dreams for the club generally? Like, what would you love for the club to achieve? Maybe even if you're really dreaming like Champions Leagues or things like, if you really want to get into your imagination, possibly more realistic goals and more dream-driven goals. It'll be interesting to read and hear from those, like reaction videos, perhaps even. Hopefully people won't be too harsh. And what do you think about some ideas like poets, artists and writers for Celtic and that kind of thing? How do you think we could attract more fans? And how do you think the club can connect with the fans and vice versa? So everyone involved in Celtic, even if we disagree on some things, can connect together so the club can listen to the fans. What do you think about the idea of the club having on its website, or even on the YouTube channel, or both, or on all forms of social media or whatnot, to having opinion polls to try and connect with the fans and listen to the fans on their opinions? And number 10, how can we empower the youth, and again ensure that there's safeguarding, how we can keep children involved at the club as safe as possible, but also around the world. We can help to empower young people around the world. I'd love to know how you think we can support the youth around the world. But also one more thing I want to finish on, because I know this went quite about 5 minutes over 5 minutes now over time, because I like to keep them 10 minutes or less. How do you think the club can develop more younger players and sort of benefit from them and help them to stick at the club for longer and develop at the club? I know that's quite difficult, because richer clubs, again, that could be where investment could, one area where I haven't even thought about where investment could help. It could even be just keeping players at the club, where we don't have to sell off our best players, as well as even buying even better players, but we can also develop the youth. I suppose that would be good for Scottish football generally, although I'm a fan of Italian football when it comes to the national team, or more generally. But in terms of keeping players at the club, having more investment means that we won't have to sell them on for to wealthier clubs. So how can the club ensure? I suppose if we do, even if we develop them and sell them on, at least we benefit from the finances. But how can the club develop more younger players and have more academies and things like that? Again, I think investment and sponsorship would help with that. But I'd love to read all your ideas. I'm sorry again if I dragged on a bit. I hope people will still enjoy it, Celtic fans especially, football fans in particular as well, or even those who want to see, well, including those who want to see the Scottish game improve, or even my fellow Italian fans. Anyway, I'm going to stop waffling. I am out. Peace and love.